pushed it. Go live. Going live. Okay. I'm live. I think. Checking the stream. Okay. Got a commercial here. So, get out of that. There we go. All right. We're live, Joan. We're live. Finally. Tony D here with the live stream. Oops. That's the wrong thing. What the heck am I looking for? Oh, I'm covering up this. Harry, are you in here? Harry ML had a bunch of questions for me. And then the moment we went live, it said some potentials, maybe potential spam may not be visible. Ah, come on. Nuts. That's not what I wanted. Dang it. Come on. I lost all your questions, Harry. I lost them all. So I hope Harry comes back to ask his questions live. If he doesn't, I'm going to try to remember them. So if anybody's in the chat right now, please say something. Where I'm going to just get the ball rolling with some sort of basics about myself and about screenwriting. This is going to be the screenwriting podcast. So this is your time to ask me questions about... I'm so mad those questions disappeared. Why would they disappear? YouTube, you're a bunch of idiots. You're a bunch of idiots. I may be a boomer, but I didn't make those questions disappear. You did, because I guess you thought they were spam because the same guy sent me 5 questions. I don't know. Anyhow, and you see on the screen I have William Goldman's Adventures in the Screenwriting Trade. This is a really good book on screenwriting. This is really the only one you need. This one is often cited. Sid Field, Screenplay, The Foundations of Screenwriting. Also, Robert McKee. You know, not to knock those guys, but I really think William Goldman is the best. There's Harry. Harry, you got to rewrite all your questions because I don't know. YouTube made them all disappear for some reason. That was one of them. Great. I'm going to get to your questions in a minute. I'm going to let people get in here. Give it a couple of minutes while I rattle off some of my credits. Right, Little Joan? So, real quick, to rattle off some of my screenwriting credits, I've had 2 screenplays, feature lengths produced. I can see your chat, Harry. So put all the questions you want, and I will get to them momentarily. So if you go on the IMDb, you will see I have 2 feature-length screenplay credits, 2 screenplays that were produced. And Joan is not going to be a good girl today. You're not going to be a good girl today. I could already tell. One was a mafia movie, and the other was a horror movie, low budget. My other screenplay credit is a short film that got on there. It's not the only short film I've done, and it's certainly not the only feature-length movie I've written. My other screenplay credits include writing scripts for Space Ghost Coast to Coast, although it's not on the IMDb because those episodes were only on the Game Tap website, which doesn't exist anymore. But it was a totally legit production. I mean, it was the original cast, real producers. And I got paid real money to do it, so it was really good. I only wish those episodes were on the IMDb so I could exploit the credit. I also wrote jokes for Politically Incorrect, which weren't scripts, but it was television. My other big credit is writing for the Simpsons comics, but that's a completely different animal writing comic books. Maybe we'll do a separate stream on that, or maybe we'll talk about it today if there's time, if we run out of roadway. But I think we're going to have plenty to talk about today. And my other screenplay credits are, like a lot of screenwriters, unproduced screenplays, literally dozens of them. I am on a yearly basis, I will say. I at this point I do, I've been doing two to 5 screenplays a year for independent producers. It's not a lot of money because they're independent producers. It's not studio work. Otherwise, I'd be rolling in it. But I do get work as a screenwriter writing low budget features. And most of those guys don't have a lot of money, and most of them never get to produce their screenplays for one reason or another. So a lot of times what you'll hear is when I do videos about screenwriting, or I criticize something in my screenwriters rant, people will say, you haven't been produced, or you're not a real screenwriter. Real screenwriters write. They write screenplays, and they're often never produced. You know, there are literally millions of screenplays in Southern California alone that are just sitting on shelves. Part of the reason they're not produced is, most of them are terrible, just like anything else. You know, comic books, books, I mean, most of them are terrible. They're not well written. But a lot of them are. I've read a few that are amazing, and they never get produced for one reason or another. It's just, you know, sometimes the timing's wrong. I mean, there's a million reasons. I could go on and on about that. So, if you've been in the business, you know how tough it is. And you just don't say stuff like that. You know, anybody who's actually worked in the business doesn't say things like, "Oh, well, you don't have a lot of credits," or you as a screenwriter, you know, you can't do it because you haven't been produced." It's hard to be a screenwriter. It really is. It's hard to make money at it. It's hard to do. You know, they're very specific skills. Even William Goldman sort of cursed the screenwriting trade before he died, and he was really good at it. I mean, he was awesome, and he was he was studio approved, I'll say. They often brought him in to fix stuff, you know, because once you get a name for it, you know, that's what the studio does. You know, it usually goes from having no work to having way too much work. But that's the nature of freelancing. That's the nature of getting famous and credits and whatnot. All right. Harry has been waiting a long time for this. I know, Harry. So let's get into screenwriting. And Harry's got a bunch of them. Thanks so much for asking them, Harry. His first question is, how do you make characters consistent but act in surprising ways? That's a good question. The key thing about consistent characters is they often have traits and goals that have to be consistent, and that limits them. So for instance, in one of my comics, I had a character named Barbara the Barbarian, and she was a parody. She was Conan meets Pamela Anderson. She was this hot, gorgeous woman who was a big, dumb barbarian. And she acted just like a barbarian, but she was super, super hot. So, brain of Conan, body of Pamela Anderson. So you can just imagine that scenario with her. Like, one of her things was she would rip off her top in the middle of a fight, distract her opponent, and then kill them when she fought in the gladiatorial arena. And she had a suit of armor, at least the top of it had a big handle on it, so she could do that. So the way I kept Barbara consistent, first, she always talked like kind of Conan or the Hulk, right? She'd be like, Barbara, do this. Barbara, no like. But I understood that her main trait wasn't that she was stupid, but that she was uneducated. She was a barbarian. So she wouldn't understand sophisticated things. And so that was her limit. And the limit was important. So in another story, Barbara breaks up with her boyfriend, and they run a bar together called the Dock and Swig. So Barbara decides to split the bar, and she gives her boyfriend Dan the outside of the bar, and she keeps the inside. See, that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of like high concept that Barbara didn't think through. So then later in the comic, the joke is, well, why don't you go to Dan and apologize to him because Dan's left the bar? And she says, I can't. I gave you work within the parameters of the limits you set, and then you have fun with that. So I could have all the fun I wanted with the Barbara the Barbarian character, as long as I kept her uneducated. As long as Barbara didn't say something like, what would be surprising is something, the scenario I just outlined. What would be inconsistent with her character is if Barbara understood the chemical reaction of, say, sodium and water. She couldn't understand that. She's uneducated, and that's her character. So you have to come up with a way around that. She would have to observe it and then go, oh, gray metal explode in water. So, this is a very basic example, but I think you get what I'm saying. The consistency of characters puts them in a box. Their limits put them in a box. So let me think of another. Let me think of a movie character. What's a good movie character who has limits? Let's see. All right, let's look at the Spider-Man movie. The limits on Peter Parker. Peter Parker is a hero. He's a good guy. So Peter isn't going to kill people, let's say. He clearly has the power to do so. Spider-Man can pick up a car. I believe his upper strength limit is he can pick up a Volkswagen and throw it. Maybe a few feet. Not very far, but he's not the Hulk. But he's very strong. So Spider-Man could kill a normal human easily. He could kill criminals if he wanted to. But he doesn't. That's part of his limit. So, and he's a super nice guy. He's trying to do good in the world. And the world, in some aspects, are kind of against him in that way. So, when he's fighting Mysterio in Far From Home, he could kill him, but he doesn't. He wants to capture him, and what's the name? Mysterio ends up killing himself, basically. Spoilers. But Spider-Man just doesn't kill people. That's why, in my view, the Zack Snyderverse doesn't work. Right? Superman kills somebody in the Snyderverse, then Batman's killing people. Like, he ignored their limits. He made the characters inconsistent. Now you could argue, well, he's doing his own version. Yeah, but if all the characters just kill people, even if that's the case, like even if it's another take, there's got to be some sort of limits, some sort of limits on who they kill, why they kill, and it just felt like lazy screenwriting in my view. I think that was more just Zack Snyder trying to up the ante without really thinking it through. I don't think he's a good screenwriter at all. I think from a visual standpoint, he's like Michael Bay, but Michael Bay I think picks much better scripts by comparison. Pain and Gain, great movie. I think he thinks it through, and that's part of the job of a screenwriter. And part of the job of a writer. You're really thinking things through on behalf of the director. So when they're making the movie, they don't have to sit around and think, well, does this scene work or whatever? Like, you're supposed to map that out. And hopefully they don't change things and F it all up. Because I know when I write a story or a screenplay, the story, I always say to my clients, is like a Swiss watch. You shouldn't take it apart, because otherwise you're going to have a bunch of pieces all over the place, unless you know what you're doing. So there are some directors, they know what they're doing. They can take apart a screenplay, add another scene, extend scenes, and it's not going to impact things because they know, they get the story, they understand it, and they're in their own way screenwriting as well. But a lot of guys don't, especially the low-level guys. The low-budget guys, unless they just happen to have an amazing knack for it, most of them, unfortunately, once they start unraveling the screenplay on set and letting the actors, you know, improv or whatever, and then hope everything comes together. A lot of that is going to just make more work for them rather than following the script. But there, in their defense, there are a lot of crappy screenwriters out there who aren't very good. Aren't very good. All right, let's get to question 2. How do you write comedy in the age of wokeness? Well, this is the question, right? This is a very important question. And the answer is very simple. Ignore wokeness. Ignore it all. There's no point in kowtowing to these people. We've said it time and time again. People on YouTube, it doesn't matter. You can make all the concessions you want. You know, you could say, well, I'm not going to say this because, you know, I don't want to offend anybody. I'm going to put in a black character of color who's disabled and trans, you know, to placate these people, even though the script doesn't require it. It won't help, because if the woke people come to cancel you, if you have the wrong politics, if you're not going to do exactly what they want, which is to be their subservient, that's what they want. Ultimately, what wokeness is, it's to criticize everything until so the woke have no interest in a nuanced position. They do not care, for instance, that Joe Rogan used the N-word in a contextual manner on his podcast, meaning that he didn't start shouting the N-word at black people. What he did was he was saying, oh, I was watching this comedian and they used the N-word. Or I was listening to this rapper and I used and that rapper used the N-word. And he said it. And they're canceling him for it, and they're all up in arms, when that is a perfectly legitimate tool. Now, I wouldn't use the word simply because I don't want the backlash, and you could argue, well, you're canceling, you're censoring yourself too. I find it rude, and it is the case that, you know, by using that word, by saying the N-word, he's trying to be edgy. I don't think he has anything to apologize for. I don't think I have anything to apologize for in what I said, other than stuff I said that was factually wrong. But you know, kowtowing to the woke idiots, the woke tards, especially in comedy, it's never going to help you. Look at Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert, I so, you know, he was such a talent to me. He was such a talent. His improv was on point. He's got such great talent, and he's squandering it now, in my view. He's a joke. His vaccine, he did this vaccine song on his show. It's sad. It's just sad to watch. This was a man who went into the White House Press Club and did a monologue about Bush, and Bush was sitting right there, and he absolutely destroyed him. Uncomfortable to watch. That's real comedy. What Colbert does on the Late Show, it's obscene. It's an outrage to comedy. It's like the comedy awards on that South Park episode. Comedy without the edge, has virtually no meaning. Comedy awards are pointless. Right, Little Joan? You're so gross, dog. How did you get so gross? So ignore the woke tards. You have to ignore them. They're going to say what they say. The only reason you're going to say you have a screenplay in which one of the characters uses the N-word, and it's comedy. Is it necessary? Because it's a hot button word, right? So a reason to take the N-word out of a screenplay might be that, well, this is the only moment in the entire screenplay where something this edgy happens, and the rest of the screenplay doesn't go along with that. So you might conclude, well, it's inappropriate to add in a scene because this is too adult for, the screenplay. The story is really PG-13, so dropping the N-word, makes sense. That's a reason to drop it. for my own thing on YouTube, there's no reason for me to use the N-word. YouTube will flag me. I don't use it. I'm not a rapper. It doesn't go with my brand. I'm not trying to be super, super edgy or anything. I'm trying to talk about screenplays and movies. Yeah, I'm trying to be funny, but I'm not. It's not a comedy podcast. Now, maybe if I did do, maybe if I was still doing stand, a little different. Maybe we'd be more edgy. Maybe we drop that word once in a while to be edgy. I don't know, but that's not my brand. So, writing comedy in the age of wokeness, you have to just write it. You have to write anything in the age of wokeness without. There's nothing to be gained by kowtowing to these people. Nothing. Even if they say, take this out and we'll give you a big fat check. Don't do it. Don't do it. If it's unnecessary, you'll regret it. Or you have to just say, well, I need the money. You might have to do that. Who knows? But I say ignore them. If you want to be known, especially if you're unknown anyway, you're not risking anything by censoring yourself. There's no and nobody really can cancel me. I have some credits. I'm a little known, but I'm not known enough to be canceled, because most of these people who cancel the woke mob, they're after their own fame. They're narcissists. These woke idiots are all about virtue signaling. So until you're famous, it's not even an issue. Got millions of followers. He's got millions of dollars on the line. He's trying to keep the show going at Spotify. He doesn't want to have to build his own website. I can totally understand that. So he's willing to make a few compromises to get through the week. Ultimately, I think, though, Joe doesn't understand his power right now. All right, Squirmy, you're done. Say bye to Joan. I'm done with Joan. All right, no more screenwriting for you. So, do you want to go back to your seat? Oh, no, you seem annoyed that I let you down. Okay, here, go to sleep. Go to sleep like you normally do. Let's move on. Where do you upload your scripts? Where do I upload scripts? These days, I don't upload scripts anywhere. What I do is I find clients who are looking for screenplays, and so when and email it to them. I did use Kevin Spacey's website for a short time, tried to get into that, tried to review some scripts and get points, but very quickly that turned into some sort of game that, I don't know, I think people were rigging in their own favor somehow. People online, they get obsessive about things. This has happened, and I've talked about this in my other videos. So I don't know if these screenplay they always tout this guy or that guy got a screenplay. I don't know, maybe they're good. I haven't had much luck with them. I have better luck just sort of flouting my credits and talking to people directly. I go to Mandy's List. That's still got ads. I go to Craigslist. Sometimes that has an ad. Yeah, now you know why my clients have no money. If you can find IMDb Pro, once in a while would have something in the IMDb things. I mean, there are places online you look for people looking for screenplays. And usually what I do is write somebody else's story in a screenplay. Selling my own screenplays, it's really tough. And part of the toughness is, you got to have a guy who has the money to buy it, number one, and you got to really sink. And a lot of these wackadoos in the movie industry, they have sensibilities that, when you hear their sensibilities, you understand why most movies don't get made. and most screenplays don't go anywhere because their sensibilities are so completely tone deaf and weird. Nobody would see these movies. They're trying so hard to be different. They drive right off the reservation of realism, right? I had a client, quote unquote. I don't think he ever paid me, so I don't know if he counts as a client, but I can't say much about him. I didn't really know anything about him, but I'll tell you that he ignored, all sorts of basic science every time I pointed out something in the screenplay that didn't make sense. But he insisted that it would be in there and that no one would care. He insisted on ignoring geology and botany and all sorts of sort of basic science things. I can't tell you exactly what it was, but it would be the equivalent of, oh, I want to shoot a movie in the mountains of New Jersey. Well, there aren't really mountains in New Jersey. Yeah, but audiences don't care. Well, why don't we just move it to another place that isn't New Jersey? Well, no, it has to be New Jersey, and it has to be a big mountain, like with snow on it. New Jersey doesn't have those. I don't know. The highest place in New Jersey isn't all that high. The highest place in South Jersey is not too far from my house, and you could just walk up the hill. It's really a hill. Stuff like that. I was consulted on a Jersey Devil script, and there was a scene in the movie. All right, I put you down. Go, do what you have to do. I'm doing a stream. Go away. So I was doing the movie took place in New Jersey, and there was a scene in which the characters go into a mini mart at a gas station and buy liquor. And for those of you who don't know, in New Jersey, you can only sell liquor in a store that has a liquor license. So in New Jersey, we have liquor stores. There's a couple of supermarkets that can sell it, but mostly it's liquor stores. Like, you have to go to a liquor store. You cannot buy beer in a mini mart in New Jersey. This is the Jersey Devil. A Jersey Devil movie takes place in New Jersey, in South Jersey. There are no mini mart gas stations with a liquor license that I'm aware of. Like, none. And I told the producer that, and he said, oh, people won't care. So people do care, because that was, obviously if you do a Jersey Devil movie, the audience is going to be, a large portion of it will be from New Jersey. So these details matter, but some people just don't care. Anywho, sorry I got off topic there. So the answer is to where I upload my scripts at pretty much nowhere these days. To me, and most of my scripts I wrote years ago. They probably all need a rewrite. And so these days I'm a hired gun for hire. So I go for the money rather than attempting to sell my screenplays. How do you get optioned? Excellent question. If a producer is interested in your screenplay, they will option it. And what an option is, for those of you who don't know, is they're essentially holding your script for a period of time. So, for instance, if they give you an option, which would be a lot of money in my view, they are holding that script until they can raise the money for it. And an option like that would probably last 2 years, with an option to renew it automatically, because $10K is a lot of money. But if they're throwing that kind of money at you, who cares? And they'll probably give you more money if they re-up it. Now, you have to be careful in signing an option, because some options never end if you sign the wrong document. You want to keep getting money if they're going to keep re-upping it. Everything under the sun. I had a producer, he said, I want to option your screenplay. I said, great, how much? He wouldn't give me any money. I said, why would I option the screenplay to you? I said, you're not going to give me any money? He's like, no. I said, then no. And he couldn't understand why I didn't want to option my screenplay. But so anything goes in Hollywood, especially in low budget Hollywood, which is everywhere these days. How do you get option? It's the same way you sell a script. I mean, if someone wants to option your screenplay, a lot of times too, if it's a low budget guy, maybe he can't afford much. He maybe just gives you a couple $100 and says, listen, I want to option your screenplay for a year, and I'm going to try to raise the money for the film. And he'll take the screenplay, he gives you $500, and he's going to option the screenplay. And the $500, a lot of times, especially in a low budget situation, would go against your eventual pay. So it's like a partial payment sometimes. Again, it depends on the option you sign. Some guys just don't have the money. They just don't have the money. They'll just tell you, I don't have the money. I can give you a little bit of money, but... And then at the end of that time period, say a year, if he hasn't raised the money, then he gives you another $500 or whatever to keep it going. He thinks he's close, or maybe, he might talk you into like, oh, can you give me like another 2-month extension? We're just talking to this investor. It's all about raising the money for the movie, which you want to have happen, right? Because ultimately you'll get paid more money, and then the movie comes out and hopefully is a big hit, and you make millions of dollars. Supermodels. Such is my dream. Anywho, so there's no set way to do it. You just got to get eyes on your screenplay, and it's nearly impossible because these guys don't want to read screenplays unless they hit that narrow window of screenplay that they're looking for. So during the X-Files days, which I always talk about because that's when I was really, really pushing to sell my screenplays, all they wanted were conspiracy theory, X-File type alien stuff. That's all they wanted. So if you had one of those scripts, yeah, you could sell it. During the, I'm dating myself here, but during the days of Die Hard, everything was Die Hard in this, Die Hard in that. Everything was Die Hard. Give me a variation on Die. I didn't really get that. And I just kept writing original screenplays, figuring that someone would go, oh, this is an original screenplay. Yes, we like that. That's not what Hollywood likes. Whatever's popular, that's what you write. So if you want to sell a screenplay now, you'd have to write some woke screed about how white people stink, or and how horrible America is, and then you might actually sell it, although I think wokeness is going out of vogue. You have to be on top, maybe a superhero, maybe a woke superhero. That kind of stuff sells. Whatever's selling, that's what they want. That's the easiest way to sell a screenplay. But you have to not only know the trend, you have to kind of be ahead of it. So I'm not sure what the new trend is. It's still kind of stuck on superheroes and wokeness. It still doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It may be changing. This is why you need to be in LA. Because in LA, you'll hear what's the new thing. You'll start to hear it. And people will get caught up in it, and then you'll go, this is what they want. And then you immediately go bang out one of those screenplays and try to sell it. So, how do you find your voice? Well, everything I just said about, making a screenplay based on what's popular, don't do that. To find your voice, you have to be original, but there's a price to be paid, right? I mean, on the one hand, you find your voice, on the other hand, you're not writing the things that Hollywood is demanding, so it makes it that much tougher to sell them. You have to find the right director, producer, or whatever who has the vision to realize, ooh, you're very talented, ooh, this is a nice screenplay. Over the years I met guys like that, but they didn't have enough money to produce the screenplays I was writing. I got some very nice letters over the years from producers and directors who said, oh, I would love to make this movie, but I can't. Hollywood's not doing this stuff now. I'll never get it greenlit. We'll never raise the money. It's too expensive. The studio hates these movies, whatever. And now it's even harder because of wokeness. So if you're not woke, if you're not a non-binary woman of color who's trans and disabled, Hollywood is like, meh. They want people who are super woke, who are part of the ideology. Not sure when, so now's the time to push your own voice. How do you find it? Well, you write a lot. You read a lot. for screenwriters, you got to read screenplays and see movies. But books can help too. There are plenty of screenplays written based on books. And some books make great movies, and some books, no, they just can't be made into a movie. The Sound and the Fury, I'm sure they've made a movie based on it, but, it would be tough to make a movie on The Sound and the Fury. Excuse me a sec, I gotta blow my nose. Ugh. I had something hanging off there. Ugh, hope you couldn't see that. Anywho, you gotta read. And to find your voice, you have to kind of get to know the voices. I recommend reading the classics, Read all the great authors, all the ones you can. Understand their voices to some degree. Understand what's good about them, and then just keep writing. You just keep writing, and eventually you find your voice. One of the ways that I found my voice is by writing stuff about South Jersey. Write what you know, they say. And by writing things about South Jersey in a bunch of different contexts, screenplays, books, and comics, over the years, that's become my thing, to bring South Jersey to the fans. And it's given me my own voice. And it just takes a long time. It just takes a long time. But you'll hear it when you know it. One of the things that really influenced me was reading Kurt Vonnegut, because one of the fascinating things about Vonnegut's work is he creates an entire universe across his books. So, a character mentioned in book A shows up in book B, as the main character in book C, that kind of thing. It was like a comic book universe almost, only a lot crazier. And that was very influential on me. I thought, oh, that's cool. That's really neat. And then, later I also got into comics, and they do that too. But with Vonnegut, I found it fascinating because I didn't think you could do that in books. And so I try to do that a little bit in my own work. So a lot of, I think, finding your voice is kind of aping the greats on it, because as they say, every story's been done. There are three main stories: man versus man society, and man versus man versus himself, man versus society, and man versus man, I guess it is. Yeah. So those are the three basic stories, and then everything else is just a variation. So, one of the great writing exercise I found, it was in Writer's Digest magazine, is you take a very stereotypical character, and the example they give is an Irish cop, right? And you write all the traits of an Irish cop. So, an Irish cop, he has an Irish accent, he walks the beat, he twirls his baton, he drinks a little too much, he has a kind of a red nose, he's a very friendly sort, and maybe he's a little corrupt, but not too corrupt. And you look at that character, that trope, and then you change one aspect of it, and you go way off the reservation. So the example they give, he's an Irish cop, but he listens to psychedelic music. And how would that change his character? Well, that makes him a completely new character, right? So he's got all these Irish tropes, but he talks about, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix and all the 60s music. Maybe he drops a little acid, and you extrapolate from that, and then you take that trope and you turn it into something new. So it's the same sort of thing with stories to some degree, but you keep doing that, and then the changes you make become your voice, I think, to a lot of extent. And then you kind of move on from that, and you start doing more and more original stuff. You also got to have something to say. A lot of guys don't really have anything to say, or they had something to say and then they run out because they're so rich and they're so ensconced in LA and the studio system. They just, their lives, they don't have the normal lives. Like, I think, and no offense to him, but Quentin Tarantino feels like a guy like that. Feels like, to some extent, and I wonder if that's because he's so ensconced in LA, he's so famous, he's so rich, that that fame and richness isolates him from the world, and so he can't really gauge the world anymore because he's not really interacting with it. He's interacting with this faux world of like being in a limo all the time, being on an estate all the time, having all the money in the world all the time, being able to do whatever he wants at the drop of a hat, you know, instantly calling up celebrities and movie stars. So, you know, you wonder why people who get famous get weird and kind of resentful of their own fame. I think that's partly why, because for years as they're coming up, they're moving up the ladder, they're trying to do, and now their entire dynamic has been upended by their own fame, and now they can't register, you know, they can't go out in public anymore. Like Quentin Tarantino, he can't go, he'll be mobbed, you know. He has to go to like the special restaurant where they clear out a table for him all the way in the corner, and nobody, you know, they put him in a room so nobody will bother him. Because in LA, I mean, everybody will bother him. I tell this story about meeting Steve Buscemi in LA while I was out there, and he wasn't even that famous, and people just mobbed him. And I felt bad for the guy, and my friend was like, well, don't you want to talk to Steve Buscemi? I go, yeah, but I feel like I'm bothering him. Everybody is like being an a-hole to him, and they're just sucking up to him, and I don't want to be a part of that. So, but that's my own weird thing about not liking to bother people, I guess. It's why I'm terrible at networking. You have to be good at networking to be a screenwriter. I've gotten better at it over the years. I sometimes kick myself for not trying to be Steve Buscemi's friend, but I mean, it's a weird mix, right? You know, I feel like I'm a normal person who would be, you know, a good soldier for Steve Buscemi's production company and write him scripts and not be a weirdo, but at the same time, like, the only way to get near enough to Steve Buscemi to have that opportunity is probably to be a little pushy and be a big weirdo and fawn all over him and hope that he becomes your friend, and then maybe you stay in contact and maybe you get an opportunity to write a screenplay for him. So that's what it's all about. You know, it's all about networking and contacts. I guarantee you, if tomorrow you married a studio executive, or, you know, got a girlfriend who was a studio executive, you'd have no problem selling your scripts. None. Zero. Because she could make it happen for you. A couple of phone calls, that's all it would take. Oh, I got a great new screenwriter, and blah, blah, blah. They do that all the time in Hollywood. And that's why there are a lot of marriages and divorces in Hollywood. How do you make dialogue authentic? This is a good one. Another good question. You're full of good questions, Harry. The way I always tell people is to go out and listen to conversations. So, and again, I'm dating myself here. I used to go to the mall. You know, I'm an 80s kid. That was the place I hung out in. Do they still have malls? Kind of. But back in the 80s, everybody was at the mall. You could sit in the middle of it. They'd have places to sit. And you could just listen to people as they walk by talking to each other. Or as they sit behind you. Like, you know, there'd be a bench here and then there'd be a bench behind you, and you could listen to their conversations. And I wasn't trying to spy on them. I wasn't trying to listen to the conversation. What I was trying to do is listen to how they talk. And you could do this in any conversation you overhear. If you're at work in a cubicle and you hear another conversation on the other side of the wall, if you're at a party and it's a big crowded room, it's tough to find a crowded room where you'd be close enough to people because of a certain virus. But hear people talk, you know, off the cuff authentically, even in your own day-to-day conversations. That's what you want to do, and you want to listen to how they talk, how the conversation flows. You know, there's a different flow to a group of women talking, a group of men talking. You know, there's a different flow to a party atmosphere versus a working atmosphere versus a group of people in a bar trying to get laid, or, you know, a networking situation with a bunch of screenplay guys. So you just want to listen to people. One of the things I always suggest to people is to take an improv class. I did improv for about 15 years. It really opens you up to listening how things are said, because you're forced to do improv. You have to listen very carefully, get all the details. And as you do more improv, you get more attuned to that. And you work with people long enough, their stories come out. And I'll give you a quick example, because I know you got a lot of questions, Harry. Keep writing those questions. We might have to do part 2. I had done, at this point, improv for about at least 10 years, I'll say. And there were people in my group, we had been doing improv for at least, I'll say 6 or 7 years together, off and on. And one of the guys in my group, I had dated his girlfriend. With his permission, by the way. Long story. That was my French movie, but I won't get into it. Long story short, he said he was fine with me dating his girlfriend, and then we did this scene in which he used his feelings about me dating his girlfriend in the scene. And I got super uncomfortable. But the reason I tell you this story is, if you do improv for a few years, you will drill down into, some of my it's tough to write, for instance, for guys to write women's dialogue and women to write men's dialogue. But if you've been in improv long enough and you have women in the group or the opposite sex in the group, believe me, you'll hear every story there is. And we had a girl in our group who would tell us her dating foibles, and it was just a fascinating insight into a single woman in the city dating, because she would say things that were absolutely insane, and we were all like, what? What does this mean, when I gave a guy oral sex and he doesn't call me back? And we were just like, well, because he got what he wanted, you moron, you blowjob idiot. Anyhow. Moving on, how do you know which character should be right for which story? Well, the way I look at it is like this. I like to come up with the ending first. Not like a detailed ending, but generally an ending, right? So let's say I'm going to write a mystery. Mysteries are about big reveals, and I decide that at the end of this mystery, it's going to be revealed that the detective committed, and us watching him, hide his murder, right? So that could be a plot, let's say. So then I know what type of character I need, right? I need a protagonist who is sympathetic enough so when I reveal that he's a murderer, that the audience goes, oh, that's why he killed him. Oh, he's kind of justified doing that. At the very least, it would be a gray area, right? Because you don't want to spend 2 hours finding a guy and find out he's a scumbag. So the character is a function of the story. You don't create a character and then try to make a story about him. What you want to do is, it's all about the story. The character is a function of the story. And you have to be willing to just change the character or come up with a new character. So you can't be glued down to, no, my character would never do that. No. You have to kill your darlings, as they say in writing. You have to be willing to say, okay, I didn't want to kill off this character, but really need to in the scene. Now, this, again, goes back to improv. One of the things you learn in improv is how to build scenes to a conclusion without knowing where you're going. And that's how I write screenplays now, because I did improv for so long. So sometimes I start the screenplay and I don't really know where I'm going. But I have the characters, and I let the characters push me in a particular direction. So you can do that if you kind of understand that what you do in improv is you heighten everything. So if your character is, for instance, his or her trait is they live big, right? They party big, they drink big, they do everything in a big way. Well, you want to heighten that to its logical conclusion. What's the logical conclusion of a character like that? Well, he pushes his luck too far and gets into a lot of trouble. And then, depending on the genre, like if it's a comedy, he pushes his luck too far, does everything big, and in the end, you know, like I guess maybe. Well, you look at the Blues Brothers, right? It's one of my favorite movies. I always love the Blues Brothers. So the premise of that movie is they're on a mission from God. So in some sense, God is protecting them. And so it kind of doesn't matter what they do, but in the end, the moment they complete their mission, the moment God is done with them, they go right to jail. And that you can end a comedy like that. So, in the case of the character who does things bigger and bigger and bigger, in a comedy, maybe he destroys the world, maybe he goes to jail. I mean, could be anything. But you want to keep heightening that character to its logical conclusion. Maybe he dies. And maybe it's very funny. It's tough to pull off, but it could be done. If it's a character who gets bigger and bigger and bigger, what he does, and it's not a comedy, let's say it's an action movie, then it's like a crazy action scene at the end. If it's a dark movie, then maybe he kills everybody at the end and himself. So it kind of, you want to use if you're using the character and just sort of following where it goes, you can use those improv skills to do that. But I would suggest having some improv skills in your back pocket so you understand that process on a very scene level. And once you understand it on a scene level, you can understand how it will translate into a screenplay level. Do you usually write high or low concept, and why? Well, these days, like I said, I write for my client, so it kind of depends on what my client is coming up with. My current client, I wrote a kind of a dark crime mystery rom-com. These are all low budget. And currently I'm writing, I guess you'd call it a crime drama? Not really sure yet. I'm not sure what you mean by high or low concept. I would say high concept is kind of like Don't Look Up is trying to be high concept, right? It's trying to make all these statements about climate change in the media and government. I think it fails miserably and it's far too partisan, but it is high concept. That's a satire. Like, I guess satire would be high concept. I think it's really easy. I think I lean towards low concept because it's very easy to get very pretentious in high concept. People get very full of themselves, and they tend to put things in just like the guys who made, I think, Don't Look Up. They're way too full of themselves. They're too self-righteous. They hate them. They hate the Trump supporters with a burning passion of 1,000 suns. And even though I think Adam McKay tried not to do it to some extent, tried to keep it kind of on his side of the aisle, at least in the beginning of the movie, by the end of the movie, he was just trashing Trump supporters. It was like, oh yeah, this is all the Republicans' fault, by the way. Like, that would be a hilarious big surprise that would all go, oh, Adam McKay, you're so clever. Oh, as Democrats and good people, we know. So yeah, I would say stay to low concept if that means what I think it means. Avoid pretentiousness. Keep things practical. That's what screenwriters have to do. Keep things on a practical level. People should do things that are practical in a screenplay. A character should play at the height of their intelligence. That's the rule in improv. How do I come up with ideas? Oh, everybody asks me this question. At a comic book convention, I tell them, oh, there's a company called the Idea Factory in Camden, New Jersey, and if you send them $19.95, they send you a bunch of ideas in an envelope. And the people who say, oh, really? Can I get that address? I say, you shouldn't be writing. That you need to go to other people for ideas. I mean, look, if you want ideas, go out and live life. go out and learn things and read books and experience life, and then you process that and you come up with ideas, because that's how it happens. I come up with ideas these days about reading about South Jersey folk tales, because that's my particular obsession and thing. I watch videos on the internet, and sometimes I go out. I don't go out a lot. I'm 55. Where am I going to go? And I'm in New Jersey, where COVID kind of is still sort of a half-ass thing. Oh shit! I shouldn't have said that word. I shouldn't have cursed. Anyhow, YouTube. I'm not making a statement on that at all. Anyhow, you come up with ideas by living your life and wanting to tell people and have something to say. You gotta have something to say. Like, what are you saying with your story? Are you saying that, and you could say things that have been said before, like, it's good to be a hero. It's, do the right thing, that kind of stuff. I tend to like those kinds of positive screenplays, so have something to say, have something to say about the world and know about the world. So you gotta know stuff. Get out there and read, I would say. How do you finish a script? It's easy to start, but hard to finish. Heighten everything. Okay? Act 1. You introduce the characters, and you introduce the problem and the obstacle that they have to overcome. That's Act 1. Act 2. The problem gets worse and worse. And the character goes on a journey to fix the problem, whatever it is. And after, leading into the third act, the character is forced to make a decision, to change in some way, or to make a sacrifice to overcome this obstacle, whatever it is. And then in the third act, either the character overcomes the obstacle and thereby changes greatly, seeing the world in a whole different way, and you've completed this journey, or the character fails, but maybe they learn an important lesson and they still change. But you must heighten the character, right? Heighten. So, especially in comedy. Let me see if I can give you an example. Well, I just watched Jack Reacher, episode 1, or Reacher, as the TV series is. And that's now, let me use a movie. What was the latest movie I saw? The Trip. Okay, I saw The Trip. It's on Netflix. Spoilers ahead. So, the premise of The Trip is there's this couple, and they hate each other. And they're married, and they kind of hate each other. One's a director, one's an actress. So, they both decided to go on this trip, but unknown to the other, they both decide to kill the other. Right? So, they're going on this trip. The husband's going to kill the wife, but the wife is ready to kill the husband. So they got it all set up, and the husband goes to kill her, and he fails. And the woman gets the upper hand. She ties up the husband, and she's wondering how she is going to kill him. But first she has to know, get all the answers to her questions out, because they have this long history, and they have these questions. That's the first act. So great movie, by the way. I'm totally ruining it, but it'll illustrate my point. So they're going to kill each other. Like, that's the premise. But they also loved each other, so that's part of it too. Because if you've ever been in love, you know, as Chris Rock said, if you've never wanted to kill anybody, you ain't never been in love. So the second act, a group of convicts is revealed to be hiding in their attic the entire time, and they during the fight between the husband and the wife, she shoots up into the ceiling with the shotgun, and it weakens the floor that the the convicts are on because it weakens the ceiling, which is their floor up in the attic. So the convicts end up falling through. They end up overpowering both the wife and the husband in a scene where the husband eventually gets the upper hand back over the wife. His friend comes to help him bury the body, but things have gone wrong. Then the husband tries to get his friend to kill the wife, and they get into a bidding war about how much money he's going to get. So he keeps switching sides, and they end up killing him. Then the convicts take over, and now the husband and wife are forced to join forces to survive. But they still hate each other. And through their horrible ordeal with the convicts, they finally get at the truth of why they hate each other so much. And the reveal is they don't really hate each other that much. And they go through this terrible ordeal. It's a Norwegian film, so it's the sensibilities are a little different. And then in the end, they end up coming back together because they bond over the horrible ordeal. So that would be the natural progression, if you think about it. Because if you started with the premise, okay, there's a husband and wife, and they want to kill each other, right? So what would be the natural progression? You can't just have one kill the other. That would be boring. So they can't kill each other. And you want people to like them. So at the end, they're going to have to come back together. So what do you need? Well, you need an external force to bring them back together. And the external force, in this case, are the convicts. So you come up with that concept, you add the convicts who are more murderous, and they have to be more murderous than the couple, right? Even though the couple end up killing a guy. But, again, Norwegian sensibilities. But they end up banding together to kill these convicts. And kill them they do. And in that ordeal, and the wife saves the husband from being, they're convicts, so they don't mind having sex with anybody with a hole, if you know what I mean. So she saves him from that. It's a horrible scene, but it's kind of funny. It's very dark comedy, by the way. But that's the escalation. It goes from, I think I'm going to kill my wife, to I'm going to kill my wife, and oh no, I'm going to kill my husband, then I'm going to kill my wife. Now the husband and wife have to kill the convicts in order to survive. And there's some other stuff that happens, but I don't want to go into it. But you escalate, you heighten everything that's happening. So I hope that makes some amount of sense. With the Blues Brothers, which I started talking about and I got off track, you're heightening the insanity because they are protected by God in the movie. That's the joke. God has ordained that Jake and Elwood will save the orphanage. That's the only reason they're being saved. So every situation they get into gets more and more crazy. That's the heightening. And Jake and Elwood just destroy everything. And they can sing. So. Harry, his final question is, I try to write TV pilots more than features. Is that wise? Well, in this atmosphere, it's hard to say. There's definitely a need for TV shows. Absolutely. And they're hungry for content. If you have the connections to make that work. Do they want to buy pilots? Pilot scripts, again, tough to sell. Because, you look at what I just talked about. Reacher is on Amazon Prime. They made that show. Why? Well, first, it was a popular Tom Cruise movie. Did okay. They did a sequel. Before that, it was a popular book. So you could see why they're making another TV show with it. Because it's popular enough, it has an audience. So when you write a TV show, the producers look at the script and say, is there an audience for this? Can we find somebody to star in this that makes sense? That's what they say. It's about money. It's about, will people watch this thing? ABC, NBC, CBS, all the big networks, you're probably not going to sell to them unless you're in LA and you have the right connection, you have the right agent, and you got a track record. Then, I mean, guys who are in that system, they make a ton of money. You know, a guy who's written a Seinfeld episode back in the 90s, he could write his own ticket. He's probably writing, you know, whatever, because he wrote for Seinfeld and he's famous. Before then, who knows? He would maybe he was a comedian who knew Jerry Seinfeld and was lucky enough to know him, and he got hired to write it because he's his friend. That's how you get the right TV or movies. I can tell you that it's probably easier to sell a movie screenplay than it is to sell a TV pilot, because a TV pilot needs more behind it. Movies tend to be more independent. People make movies all the time that no one's ever seen them. Because just some crazy guy with money decides, I'm making a movie and it's going to star me and I'm a great actor. And he's not. You know, it may take a while for them to get on, but movies can kind of, for the most part, a lot harder, because it's not just a question of, can we put this pilot on the air? It's like, can the cast come back and start doing the show on a regular basis? You need a production company behind you that can actually produce shows on time and in the format properly for the network or whoever's going to show it. From a production standard, so writing TV pilots, again, you got to be in Southern California. You got to kind of be piped into that Los Angeles deal. That's where they make TV in America. Maybe a little bit New York. Maybe if you're in the New York scene, in the comedy scene, and you've written some stuff, you might have an edge. This is how people get gigs. They do stand-up. They do improv. They're in the scene. They know everybody. And then eventually they hear, just by dint of being there and hearing from other people, oh man, NBC is looking for screenplays for this new comedy show. And the show, if you're going to break in a TV pilot, the show you're going to end up writing for is whatever's brand new, nobody ever heard of it. You know, you might end up writing for, Aquafina has a new TV show. They're going to put it on Comedy Central and they need comedy writers. And it just so happens you have some creds. Oh, no problem, Harry. My pleasure to answer your questions. You know, you have some comedy creds, you know, and again, the woke stuff comes into it now too, because it's like, if you're going to write for Aquafina, it's probably going to be very woke, you know, depending on your race, ethnicity, and sexual preference. You know, they might say, oh, Aquafina, oh, this is an Asian comedian. Oh, well, we got to hire an Asian comedian because Aquafina's Asian and blah, 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 blah. That's just the way it is now. Is it going to be that way forever? Hopefully not. Hopefully your credits will speak for themselves. But you got to kind of be in the scene. It's kind of the same with screenplays, although not as much. You can be... yeah, I think it's just you and me in this live stream. Well, other people will watch it. I usually get about 30, 40 people watching it after. You know, it's screenwriting, Harry. Not a lot of people want to do it, sadly. Sadly, not a lot of people. And when I say sadly, it's not that I want more competition. I just want the bar to be marginally higher. So when people read one of my screenplays, they go, oh, this is good, therefore we should hire this guy. Not, oh, this guy is the wrong color, or this guy, you know, I don't know him, so let me go hire my nephew who's never written a screenplay in his life to bang something out. Another way to get into all this is to go to college at USC or someplace in LA. I actually had applied to USC, but this is my story. They dropped my application behind a filing cabinet and never processed it. and I got offers from every college I applied to because I had very good grades. And then I called USC and I was like, why didn't you guys process my application? And over the phone, they found my application behind the filing cabinet. And it was too late. And I said, okay, well, can I have my filing fee back? And they said, yeah. So my life would have been completely different had I been accepted to USC, because I would have totally gone there. Even though I didn't want to go to a big college, I knew that going to LA was where I wanted to be to work in the movie industry. My life would have been completely different. Oh, yeah. I'd probably be dead. Probably, to be honest, because I probably would have been in the pipeline, probably would have got some work, and then probably died doing too many drugs and whatnot. I mean, not that I'm a drug guy, but I might have done it just to fit in, to get the part. I have my vices. Everybody does. So maybe it was a good thing I didn't go out to LA. Yeah, so that's it, Harry. I think that's all the questions I can answer today. It's 3:13. Is there anything else? I'm going to wrap it up. Was there nobody else in this damn live stream? It says 3 watching now. It says 3. Sorry, Joan bailed early, but I knew that was going to happen. I got 4 upvotes. That's pretty good. So hopefully somebody will watch this down the road. Maybe before I'll go, oops, wrong one. Maybe before I go, I will, like I said, run down the basics in screenwriting. The main thing you need to know, the main thing to be a good screenwriter is it's all about format. Because you want to put it in a format so everybody can look at the script. And no problem, Harry. Everybody can look at the script and know how to build the movie. You're the architect of the movie. So you want to make everything very, very clear in the screenplay what is happening. So so any moron could take that script and direct it if they follow the instructions. JEC is here. Oh no, you got here late. Oh well. Sorry, I got to wrap up, JEC. Yeah, so you want to make everything clear in the screenplay so, the director, the actors, everybody understands. And you want to use the format that's established in books like William Goldman's book. I mean, you can find the format online so they know what they're looking at, right? So they can break it down according to. I use Final Draft, works out great. Man, it puts everything in the format. It's so much easier. In the old days, I didn't have it, and it cost me because a lot of my old screenplays are still in the wrong font. I still have to transfer some of them. But, yeah, sorry, JEC. I got to wrap it here. Thanks for tuning in. This has been the Sunday 2 p.m. live stream every Sunday. This week was screenwriting tips. I'm not sure what we're going to do next week. I'll come up with something. This is Tony D signing off for little Joan, who bailed on me. We'll see you next time.